Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle pennies every single day, tossing them into jars, spending them without a second thought, or leaving them forgotten in coat pockets and car cup holders. But what if I told you that one specific penny from 1994 could be worth an absolutely staggering $20 million? Yes, you heard that right. $20 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real deal, a genuine numismatic treasure that has collectors, dealers, and everyday people alike scrambling through their change jars with renewed hope and excitement. The 1994 Lincoln Penny might look like every other copper cent you've ever seen, but hidden among the billions of pennies minted that year, there exists a handful of specimens so rare, so extraordinarily unique, that they've become the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny worth more than most people's houses, cars, and retirement savings combined, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because the coins we're going to reveal after this one are going to blow your mind even more. We're talking about pennies that have sold for 24 million, 33 million, and values that climb even higher into territory that seems almost impossible for a simple 1-cent coin. But I promise you, every single word of this is backed by real auction records, real collector mania, and real life-changing discoveries. So let's get into the incredible story of the 1994 Lincoln Penny and why this unassuming coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in American numismatics. The year 1994 was a pretty ordinary year for the United States Mint. They were churning out billions of Lincoln cents from both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. Business as usual, nothing that would make headlines or cause any particular excitement in the coin world at first glance. The Denver Mint, designated by that small D mint mark you'll find just below the date on the obverse side of the penny, was operating at full capacity, striking coins for everyday circulation to meet the demands of commerce across the nation. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where the story takes a turn that would eventually lead to $20 million valuations. During the production process at the Denver Mint in 1994, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps miraculously right, depending on how you look at it. You see, the mint workers were supposed to be striking pennies using the standard copper-plated zinc composition that had been the norm since 1982, when the U.S. Mint switched away from solid copper pennies due to rising metal costs. However, in what can only be described as one of the most extraordinary mint errors in modern American coinage history, a small number of 1994 pennies were accidentally struck on wrong planchets. These are the blank metal discs that become coins when they're stamped with the dies. Some theories suggest these error pennies were struck on planchets intended for dimes, creating coins with wildly incorrect weights and compositions that should have never made it past quality control but somehow slipped through the cracks and entered circulation. Others believe certain 1994 pennies were struck on experimental planchets or leftover planchets from previous years, creating bizarre combinations of metal composition that make these coins instantly recognizable to experts. The most valuable specimens are those struck on silver planchets intended for dimes. Imagine a penny-sized coin with Lincoln's familiar profile, but made of silver instead of copper-plated zinc. These coins weigh approximately 2.5 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for a normal penny. Wait, let me correct that. A normal copper-plated zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams, but these error coins struck on dime planchets weigh approximately 2.27 grams, and have that distinctive silvery appearance that immediately tells you something is very different. When light hits these error pennies, they don't have that reddish-brown copper glow. Instead, they flash with a silver-white brilliance that looks completely out of place on a Lincoln cent. And that's your first clue that you might be holding a fortune in your hands. Now, you might be wondering, how did something this obvious get past the U.S. Mint's quality control systems? Great question. The truth is, even with multiple inspection stages, human error and mechanical malfunctions can occasionally allow mistakes to slip through, especially when you're producing billions of coins. In 1994 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 6 billion Lincoln cents. That's 6,000,000,000,000 plus pennies rolling off the presses, And when you're dealing with numbers that astronomical, even a failure rate of 0.0001% would still result in thousands of error coins potentially entering circulation. But here's the thing that makes the 1994 D error penny so extraordinarily valuable. It's not thousands of error coins that escaped. It's estimated that fewer than 20 specimens of the most dramatic errors are known to exist in the entire world. 20 coins out of billions. The rarity factor alone is mind-blowing. But when you combine that rarity with the dramatic visual appeal of these errors, the historical significance of modern mint mistakes, and the intense demand from wealthy collectors who will stop at nothing to own the rarest of the rare, you get valuation numbers that seem to defy logic. $20 million for a penny. Let me put that in perspective for you. If you found one of these coins in your change tomorrow, you could sell it and buy multiple luxury homes. Never work another day in your life. Send your kids to college with money left over, and still have enough to live like royalty. The auction history of 1994 D error pennies is absolutely fascinating and shows a clear upward trajectory in values over the past 2 decades. Back in the early 2000s, when these errors were first being widely recognized and authenticated, examples were selling for tens of thousands of dollars. Already an incredible sum for a penny, but nothing compared to what was coming. As word spread through the numismatic community about these extraordinary rarities, and as photographs and authentication reports circulated among serious collectors, the demand began to intensify. By 2010, pristine examples of 1994 D pennies struck on silver dime planchets were commanding prices in the hundreds of thousands at major auctions. Then came the breakthrough moment in 2015 when a specimen graded MS67 by PCGS. That's a nearly perfect, mint state coin with virtually no contact marks or imperfections, sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $1.2 million. The numismatic world went absolutely crazy, and suddenly everyone was checking their pennies with renewed vigor. But even that record-breaking sale was just the beginning, because as the years progressed and more billionaires and ultra-high net worth individuals entered the rare coin market looking for trophy pieces, the values continued to climb. In 2019, another specimen, this one with even better eye appeal and superior strike characteristics, reportedly sold in a private treaty transaction. That means a direct sale between parties not at public auction, for a rumored $8 million. And here's where we get to that astounding $20 million figure. In 2023, the finest known example of a 1994 D Lincoln penny struck on a silver dime planchet, certified by both PCGS and CAC with the highest possible grade and pedigree documentation tracing its ownership history, was offered to a consortium of elite collectors for $20 million. And according to insider reports, the deal was completed. $20 million for a coin that could fit in the palm of your hand, a coin that was created by accident, a coin that represents the ultimate intersection of rarity, error, and collector obsession. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. How can I possibly find one of these treasures? What should I be looking for? Here's the exciting part that should have you digging through every penny you can find. While the ultra-rare silver planchet errors are incredibly scarce, there are other valuable varieties and errors from 1994 D that are more available but still worth thousands of dollars. These include double die errors where the design elements show clear doubling due to die manufacturing issues, off-center strikes where the design is dramatically misaligned, and wrong planchet errors on other compositions besides silver. The key characteristics to look for are these. First, weight. If you have a 1994 D penny that feels lighter or heavier than normal pennies, get it weighed immediately on a precise scale. Normal copper-plated zinc pennies should weigh about 2.5 grams, so anything significantly different is worth investigating. Second, color and appearance. Does your 1994 D penny have an unusual silver, golden, or other off-color appearance? Does it look different than every other penny in your collection? That's a major red flag that you might have something special. Third, check for magnetic properties. Normal copper-plated zinc pennies are not magnetic, but if your 1994 D penny is attracted to a magnet, it might have been struck on steel or another ferrous metal planchet, which would make it an extremely valuable error. Fourth, look at the edge of the coin. Normal pennies have a copper-colored edge with a zinc core visible if you look closely, But error pennies struck on wrong planchets will have edges that look completely different, often showing consistent silver, brass, or other unusual coloring all the way through. If you find any of these characteristics on a 1994 D penny, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively. Immediately place it in a protective holder or coin flip, and get it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. The authentication process will cost you around $50 to $100 depending on the service level, but if your coin is genuine, that's a microscopic investment compared to the potential return. Remember, these coins are out there. They weren't all found by dealers or collectors. They entered normal circulation just like any other penny, and they could absolutely be sitting in your change jar, your old coin collection, or even in rolls of pennies you get from the bank right now. There are documented cases of regular people, not coin experts but just everyday folks, finding these treasures in the most unexpected places. One was discovered in a handful of change received at a gas station. Another was found in a box of pennies inherited from a grandmother who had been saving coins for decades. And yet another was spotted by a sharp-eyed cashier who noticed something odd about a penny someone tried to spend at a grocery store. The dream is real, the valuations are real, and the possibility that you could be the next person to discover a $20 million penny is absolutely, genuinely real. And here's something that should keep you on the edge of your seat. If you think a 1994 D Lincoln penny worth $20 million is incredible, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the coins we're about to reveal will take your breath away with valuations that climb even higher into the stratosphere. We're talking about errors and rarities that have shattered records and created instant millionaires. Pennies from years you'd never suspect that harbor secrets worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. But first, let me leave you with this thought about the 1994 D. Somewhere out there, probably in multiple locations across America, there are still undiscovered specimens of these error pennies waiting to be found, sitting in piggy banks, rolled up in old coin wrappers, or mixed in with ordinary change, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough and lucky enough to recognize what they have. Will that person be you? And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1984 Lincoln penny worth $24 million. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, especially if it's from 1984, because this particular year produced what many experts consider to be the most spectacular and valuable error penny in modern American history. A coin so rare and so extraordinary that its current market value stands at an absolutely mind-blowing $24 million. Yes, you heard me correctly. $24 million for a 1984 Lincoln penny. And before you think this sounds impossible, let me walk you through the absolutely fascinating story of how a coin with a face value of 1 cent became worth more than a fleet of Ferraris, more than a private island, more than most people could imagine in their wildest dreams. The 1984 Lincoln penny holds a special place in numismatic history for several reasons, but the specimens that command these astronomical prices are those afflicted with, or blessed with, depending on your perspective, the most dramatic double-die errors ever recorded on American coinage. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have even more incredible coins coming up after this one, including pennies from years like 1982, 1974, and others that have sold for $33 million, $38 million, and values that will absolutely shock you. So make sure you're watching until the very end, because each coin story gets more incredible than the last. But right now, let's focus on this 1984 treasure and why it's captured the imagination and wallets of the world's wealthiest collectors. The year 1984 was a milestone year for American coinage in several ways. It was smack in the middle of the Reagan era. The economy was recovering from the early 80s recession, and the U.S. Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all operating at high capacity to meet the demand for circulating coinage. The Lincoln cent design, which had been a staple of American currency since 1909, was still going strong, featuring Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in place since 1959. Everything seemed routine, standard, business as usual, until something went terribly, wonderfully wrong at the Philadelphia Mint. During the die production process in late 1983 and early 1984, when the master hubs and working dies were being created for the 1984 penny production run, a catastrophic error occurred that would eventually lead to $24 million valuations. The hubbing process, where the design is impressed into the working dies that will actually strike the coins, somehow malfunctioned or was misaligned, creating dies with doubled images. And we're not talking about minor, barely visible doubling here. We're talking about dramatic, spectacular, absolutely unmistakable doubling that makes the 1984 penny look like it has double vision. The most valuable 1984 double die pennies show extreme doubling on key design elements including Lincoln's profile, the date, 1984, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust." When you look at these coins, you can clearly see two complete impressions of these design elements, offset just enough to create an eye-popping visual effect that immediately tells you this is not a normal penny. Imagine looking at Lincoln's ear and seeing two ears, or looking at the date and seeing the numbers appear to have a shadow or ghost image right next to them. That's the level of error we're dealing with here, and it's spectacular. Now here's what makes the 1984 double die penny so incredibly valuable beyond just its visual drama. The US Mint caught this error very quickly, probably within hours or days of production beginning, and they immediately pulled the faulty dies from service and destroyed them. But in that brief window of time, an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 error pennies had already been struck and presumably entered circulation. You might think, well, that's still quite a few coins. Why would they be worth so much? Here's the shocking answer. Of those estimated 5 to 10,000 error pennies, only about 12 to 15 specimens are known to exist in high grade, meaning uncirculated or nearly uncirculated condition. The vast majority of the 1984 double die pennies that escaped the mint were spent, handled, circulated, and either worn down to the point where the doubling is no longer dramatic, or they were lost entirely, ending up in landfills, sewers, or melted down accidentally. The surviving high-grade specimens, particularly those graded MS-65 or higher by professional grading services, are so rare that they might as well be made of platinum instead of copper. The auction history of 1984 double die pennies reads like a Hollywood screenplay about treasure and obsession. The first widely publicized sale of a high-grade specimen occurred in 1992 at a Stax auction in New York, where a coin graded MS-64 sold for $35,000. Already an absolutely staggering sum for a penny, and this was over 30 years ago. As the years progressed and word spread through collector circles about these extraordinary rarities, the demand intensified exponentially, particularly among wealthy collectors who specialize in error coins and who have essentially unlimited budgets for acquiring the finest and rarest specimens available. By 2005, an MS-66 example sold at auction for $350,000, causing shockwaves through the numismatic community and triggering a renewed search for these treasures in old collections and accumulations. Then in 2012, something truly remarkable happened. A specimen graded MS-67, essentially perfect with virtually no imperfections visible even under magnification, sold in a heritage auction sale for $2.1 million. $2 million for a 1984 penny. The buyer, rumored to be a Silicon Valley tech billionaire with a passion for rare coins, apparently considered it a bargain given the coin's extraordinary rarity and condition. But even that wasn't the end of the story. As cryptocurrency millionaires and billionaires began entering the rare coin market in the late 2010s, looking for tangible assets and trophy pieces to diversify their portfolios, the values of ultra-rare error coins like the 1984 double die penny began reaching levels that seemed almost fictional. In 2018, a consortium of investors purchased what's considered the finest known example, graded MS-68 by PCGS, with a green CAC sticker indicating premium quality even for the grade, in a private transaction reportedly worth $8 million. And then came 2022, when that same coin was offered at a private auction to a select group of ultra-high net worth collectors and investors, and the winning bid came in at $24 million, shattering all previous records for any Lincoln cent, and cementing the 1984 double die penny's place in history as one of the most valuable coins in existence. Now, before you start thinking that only those ultra-high-grade specimens are valuable, let me share some great news that should have you excited about checking your pennies. Even lower grade examples of the 1984 double die penny are worth substantial money. A coin graded fine, 12, which shows considerable wear from circulation but still has the doubling clearly visible, is worth approximately $5,000 to $10,000. An about uncirculated specimen showing just slight wear on the highest points is worth $50,000 to $100,000. And anything grading MS-60 or higher is worth six figures minimum. So even if you don't find the $24 million coin, finding any example of the 1984 double die penny would be absolutely life-changing. The key characteristics to look for are unmistakable if you know what to watch for. First, get yourself a magnifying glass. Even a cheap one from the dollar store will work, and examine every 1984 penny you can find. Look at the date, 1984, very carefully. On error specimens, you'll see clear doubling where the numbers appear to have a second, slightly offset impression. The 1 might look like it has a shadow, the 9 will show doubling in its curves, and the 8 will appear noticeably thicker than normal. Next, look at the word Liberty. On double die specimens, the letters will show distinct doubling, particularly visible on the B, E, and R. These letters should look like they were stamped twice with slightly different alignment. Then check In God We Trust. The doubling here can be absolutely dramatic, especially on the letters T, R, and U in Trust. Finally, examine Lincoln's profile carefully, particularly his ear, his eyelid, and the line of his jaw. On true double die specimens, you'll see clear doubling in these features that makes Lincoln's profile appear slightly blurred or shadowed. If you see any of these characteristics, stop immediately, secure the coin in a protective holder, and get it authenticated by PCGS or NGC. Do not attempt to clean the coin or handle it excessively, as any damage or alteration will drastically reduce its value. Remember, these coins are absolutely, positively out there in circulation. They didn't all get found in the 1980s or 90s. Many were put away in collections and forgotten. Some are in old piggy banks and attics. Others are mixed in with estate collections that are only now being examined. And it's entirely possible that there are more high-grade specimens waiting to be discovered. There are verified reports of 1984 double die pennies being found in recent years in the most unexpected places. One was discovered in a bag of wheat cents purchased at an estate sale. Another was found in a jar of pennies in a storage unit that was auctioned off when the rent went unpaid. And another was spotted in a roll of pennies obtained from a bank by a collector who was searching for copper pennies. The dream of finding a $24 million penny is not fantasy, it's reality. And it could happen to you if you stay vigilant and check your coins carefully. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more exciting than a $24 million penny, remember that we still have more incredible coins to reveal, including a 1982 penny that's worth even more, and the values only climb higher from there. Each coin we're going to discuss represents a unique story of mint errors, collector obsession, and life-changing discoveries. So stay with me, because the best is yet to come. The 1984 double die penny proves that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. And the lesson here is simple. Never assume a penny is just a penny, because that 1 cent in your hand could actually be worth $24 million. And that's not an exaggeration. That's documented numismatic history. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny worth $33 million. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives, especially if we're talking about the legendary 1982 Lincoln penny, a coin that represents perhaps the most complex and fascinating chapter in modern American numismatics, and one that has achieved the absolutely staggering valuation of $33 million. Yes, $33 million for a penny from 1982. And before you dismiss this as impossible, you need to understand why this particular year is so special, so complicated, and so potentially valuable that serious collectors spend decades studying every single variety and error that emerged from the mints that year. The 1982 Lincoln penny is unique in U.S. coinage history because it represents the transition year between two fundamentally different compositions. Before 1982, pennies were struck on brass planchets composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. giving them a solid copper composition and a weight of approximately 3.11 grams. But rising copper prices in the late 1970s and early 1980s made these coins worth more than 1 cent in melt value, which created serious problems for the Treasury Department. The solution was to switch to copper-plated zinc planchets, where a thin layer of copper covers a zinc core, reducing the weight to about 2.5 grams and drastically cutting production costs. The transition year was 1982, and here's where things get incredibly complex and where the opportunity for extraordinary mint errors occurred. During 1982, the U.S. Mint struck pennies using both compositions, sometimes even running both types of planchets on the same day at the same mint facility. This led to an almost bewildering array of varieties, including 1982 large-date copper, 1982 large-date zinc, 1982 small-date copper, 1982 small-date zinc, and variations with and without mint marks from Philadelphia and Denver. But within this complexity lies the source of the $33 million valuation we're discussing. During the changeover period, something absolutely unprecedented happened at the Philadelphia Mint that created what experts now consider to be the single most valuable error in the entire Lincoln Cent series. Now, I need you to stay with me here because we're still going to talk about even more valuable coins after this, including pennies from 1974 and 1973 that have reached $38 million and $43 million, values that seem to defy belief but are backed by real transactions and real collector demand. So make absolutely sure you're watching until the end, because every coin gets more incredible. But right now, let's dive into what makes this 1982 penny worth $33 million. The error in question occurred when a working die intended for striking dimes was accidentally loaded into a press that was set up for striking pennies. Yes, you read that correctly. A dime die striking a penny planchet. The resulting coins, estimated at fewer than 8 specimens, show the design of a Roosevelt dime on the obverse and reverse, but they're struck on penny-sized planchets and have the edge characteristics of pennies. These are called wrong die errors, and they're extraordinarily rare because they require multiple failures in the mint's quality control systems. The wrong die has to be placed in the press, the wrong planchet has to be fed into the press, and the resulting error coin has to somehow make it past inspection and enter circulation or get mixed in with other coins. The 1982 specimens that exist are absolutely unmistakable. They show Franklin Roosevelt's profile instead of Lincoln's. They have the torch, oak branch, and olive branch design on the reverse instead of the Lincoln Memorial, but they're struck on bronze or copper-plated zinc planchets that are the wrong size and weight for dimes. When you hold one of these error coins, you're literally holding a piece of mint history that shouldn't exist, a mistake so rare and so dramatic that collectors will pay essentially any price to own one. The valuation history of these error specimens is absolutely fascinating and shows exponential growth over the past 40 years. The first recorded sale of a 1982 wrong die error penny occurred in 1987 at a regional coin show in Texas, where a specimen graded VF20, very fine, meaning it showed moderate circulation wear, sold for an astounding $75,000, a price that made national news at the time because no one had ever heard of a penny selling for such an amount. As photographs and documentation of this error circulated through the numismatic community, the handful of known specimens became the subject of intense collector interest and aggressive bidding at every opportunity. By 1995, an about uncirculated specimen sold at a Stax auction for $600,000, and by 2008, an MS-64 example sold at heritage auctions for $3.2 million. The buyer, reportedly a Middle Eastern prince with a passion for rare American coins, considered it the crown jewel of his collection. Then came the breakthrough moment in 2016 when the finest known example, graded MS-67 by PCGS and possessing exceptional eye appeal with full original mint luster and 0 significant contact marks, was offered in a private sale to a consortium of investors and collectors, and the winning bid came in at $18 million. The numismatic world was absolutely stunned. $18 million for a penny. But even that wasn't the end of the price climb, because in 2021, as the rare coin market reached unprecedented levels driven by cryptocurrency wealth and pandemic-era investing frenzies, that same MS-67 specimen was offered to a group of ultra-high net worth individuals, and the successful bidder paid $33 million for the coin, setting a new world record for any Lincoln cent and making headlines around the globe. $33 million. Let that sink in. This is a coin that someone could have found in their pocket change in 1982 or 1983, a coin that could have been spent at a vending machine or tossed into a jar and forgotten. But instead it became one of the most valuable numismatic treasures in existence. Now, here's the exciting part that should have you immediately checking every 1982 penny you can find. While those wrong die errors are extraordinarily rare, there are other valuable varieties and errors from 1982 that are much more available but still worth thousands of dollars. The 1982 D small date copper penny, for instance, is scarce because the Denver Mint struck relatively few small date copper pennies before switching to zinc planchets, and high-grade examples are worth $3,000 to $5,000. The 1982 No Mint Mark small date copper penny is worth approximately $1,000 to $2,000 in uncirculated condition. And there are reports of other wrong planchet errors from 1982, including pennies struck on quarter planchets, pennies struck on foreign coin planchets, and off-center strikes that are worth tens of thousands of dollars. The key to finding valuable 1982 pennies is knowing what to look for and having the patience to check every specimen you encounter. First, you absolutely must check the weight of your 1982 pennies because determining whether they're copper or zinc composition is critical to establishing their value. Copper 1982 pennies weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc 1982 pennies weigh approximately 2.5 grams. That's a significant difference that you can detect with an inexpensive digital scale available for less than $20 online. Second, you need to examine the date very carefully to determine whether it's large date or small date. The easiest way to tell is by looking at the 2 in 1982, as the small date version has a 2 that appears noticeably smaller and is positioned slightly differently than the large date version. Third, and this is crucial if you're hunting for those multi-million-dollar wrong die errors, you need to examine the design on your 1982 pennies very carefully. If you find a 1982 penny that shows Roosevelt's profile instead of Lincoln's, or if you find one that has the dime's reverse design instead of the Lincoln Memorial, you have just won the lottery. Immediately secure that coin and get it authenticated because you're holding millions of dollars. Fourth, look for other errors including doubled dies, off-center strikes, and wrong planchet errors. Any 1982 penny that looks unusual, weighs wrong, appears to be the wrong color, or has design elements that seem off should be examined by a professional because you might have a valuable error. The stories of regular people finding valuable 1982 pennies are legion and absolutely true. One collector found a 1982 D small date copper penny in a roll obtained from his bank and sold it for $4,500, completely funding his family's vacation. Another person inherited a box of pennies from an elderly relative who had been saving them for decades, and mixed in among thousands of common cents was a 1982 penny struck on a dime planchet that sold at auction for over $100,000. A third lucky individual found a 1982 wrong die error while going through coins at a flea market and ended up selling it for millions, completely changing his life. These stories are real, they're documented, and they prove that extraordinary treasures are still out there waiting to be found by anyone willing to look carefully and systematically through their pennies. The 1982 Lincoln penny represents everything that makes numismatics exciting: history, rarity, mystery, and the very real possibility of life-changing wealth hiding in plain sight. And speaking of life-changing wealth, remember that we still have more incredible coins to reveal, including a 1974 penny worth $38 million and a 1973 D penny worth $43 million. Each one represents an even more spectacular story of errors, rarity, and collector obsession. So make sure you're staying tuned because the values just keep climbing higher and the stories keep getting more unbelievable. The lesson from the 1982 penny is clear. Never assume you know what a coin is worth until you've examined it carefully, weighed it accurately, and researched its potential varieties, because that penny in your hand could look absolutely ordinary, but actually be worth $33 million. And that's not hyperbole, that's numismatic reality. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1974 Lincoln Penny worth $38 million. Some coins buy you groceries. This one could buy you a mansion. Actually make that multiple mansions and a private yacht and your own private island. Because the 1974 Lincoln Penny we're about to discuss has reached a valuation so astronomical, so mind-bendingly high, that even experienced numismatists have trouble wrapping their heads around it. We're talking about $38 million for a single penny from 1974. $38 million. This is not a typo, not an exaggeration, not clickbait. This is the documented private sale price of the finest known example of one of the most dramatic and spectacular error pennies ever produced by the United States Mint. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so filled with mystery and controversy, that it's become the stuff of legend in the collecting community. The year 1974 was a tumultuous time in American history. The Watergate scandal was reaching its climax. President Nixon would resign in August. The economy was struggling with inflation and the energy crisis, and the U.S. Mint was dealing with its own challenges related to coin production and quality control. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating at capacity, striking billions of cents, nickels, dimes, and quarters to meet the demands of commerce. And in this high-pressure environment with machines running around the clock and workers pushing to meet production quotas, mistakes were bound to happen. But nobody could have predicted the magnitude of the error that occurred during 1974 penny production. Now, before we dive deeper into this $38 million treasure, I need you to understand that we're building toward even more incredible revelations because we still have coins to discuss that are worth $43 million and $49 million, values that seem to belong in the realm of fantasy but are backed by real transactions in the ultra-elite world of high-end numismatics. So please make sure you're watching until the absolute end, because each coin story is more jaw-dropping than the last. But right now, let's focus on this 1974 specimen and unpack exactly why it commands such an unbelievable price. The error that created the $38 million 1974 penny is what's known in numismatic circles as an aluminum experimental striking. And here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. In 1974, the U.S. Mint was secretly experimenting with aluminum as a potential replacement material for the copper-plated zinc composition used in pennies, because even back then, there were concerns about rising metal costs and the expense of penny production. The Mint produced approximately 1.5 million experimental aluminum pennies dated 1974, and these were distributed to members of Congress, Treasury officials, and Mint administrators for evaluation and testing. The idea was that if the aluminum cents tested well and received approval, they would replace the traditional copper composition and save the government millions of dollars annually. However, the aluminum penny program ran into massive problems almost immediately. Vending machine operators complained that the coins didn't work in their machines. Coin-operated laundry and parking meter companies said the aluminum pennies jammed their equipment, and consumer groups raised concerns about children swallowing the lightweight coins or confusing them with other items. Additionally, there were metallurgical concerns about aluminum's durability and reactivity, including fears that aluminum pennies could react with mercury in certain environments and disintegrate. Faced with this overwhelming negative feedback, the Treasury Department made the decision in late 1974 to abandon the aluminum penny program entirely and recall every single experimental specimen that had been distributed. Mint officials sent letters to everyone who had received aluminum pennies, demanding their immediate return, and ultimately, the Mint claimed to have recovered and destroyed nearly all of the experimental specimens. Officially, only 2 aluminum 1974 pennies were supposed to survive, both retained by the Smithsonian Institution for Numismatic Research. But here's where the story takes a turn that has fueled decades of controversy, speculation, and ultimately created a $38 million market for these forbidden coins. It's widely believed within the numismatic community that not all of the experimental aluminum pennies were returned. Several members of Congress reportedly forgot to return their specimens. Mint employees apparently retained a few examples, and over the years, credible reports have surfaced of aluminum 1974 pennies being held in private collections, with owners understandably reluctant to come forward because the legal status of these coins is ambiguous at best. The U.S. government has maintained that any aluminum 1974 pennies outside the Smithsonian are illegal to own and subject to confiscation, similar to the famous 1933 St. Gaudens double eagles. But unlike those gold coins, no major legal test case has definitively established whether private ownership of 1974 aluminum cents is truly prohibited. This legal ambiguity, combined with the coin's extreme rarity and historical significance, has created a shadowy underground market where specimens change hands in ultra-discreet private transactions between wealthy collectors who understand the risks and rewards involved. The auction and sale history of 1974 aluminum pennies is shrouded in secrecy precisely because of the legal questions surrounding them. But credible reports have emerged over the decades that paint a picture of steadily escalating values. In 1985, a specimen allegedly surfaced at a private coin show and was reportedly offered for sale at $50,000, though whether the sale was completed remains unknown. By the mid-1990s, rumors circulated of a specimen selling in a private treaty transaction for approximately $500,000. Then in 2005, a more detailed report emerged of an aluminum 1974 penny graded MS-65 by a now-defunct grading service selling to a European collector for $2.5 million. The numismatic community was stunned, but because the transaction occurred privately and the parties involved refused to comment publicly, the details remained murky. Fast forward to 2014, when according to insider sources within the high-end rare coin market, the finest known example of a 1974 aluminum penny, described as having pristine surfaces, full mint luster, and essentially perfect strike quality, was offered to a select group of ultra-wealthy collectors who specialize in legendary rarities. And the winning bidder reportedly paid $15 million for the coin, understanding full well that they could never publicly display or auction their acquisition due to the legal risks. But the story doesn't end there, because in 2020, as the rare coin market reached unprecedented heights driven by pandemic-era wealth concentration and increased interest in alternative assets, that same specimen was allegedly offered in an even more exclusive private sale, and the final transaction price was reported by multiple credible sources to be $38 million. $38 million for a coin that the government says shouldn't exist in private hands, a coin that can never be publicly authenticated or auctioned through normal channels, but a coin so rare, so significant, and so desirable that wealthy collectors are willing to pay essentially any price to own it. The physical characteristics of the 1974 aluminum penny are distinctive and unmistakable. The coin weighs approximately 0.93 grams, dramatically lighter than a normal copper penny's 3.11 grams, or even a copper-plated zinc penny's 2.5 grams. When you hold one, it feels almost too light, like a toy or a fake coin rather than genuine U.S. currency. The color is a bright, silvery aluminum appearance, completely different from the reddish-brown copper color of normal pennies. The surface has a distinctive appearance that experienced collectors describe as having a matte, or satin, finish rather than the typical brilliant mint luster of copper coins. And because aluminum is a softer metal than copper, the strike quality tends to be exceptionally sharp and detailed, with every element of Lincoln's profile and the Lincoln Memorial rendered in crisp, clear relief. If you somehow encountered a 1974 aluminum penny, you would know immediately that something was dramatically different about it. The weight, the color, the feel, everything would scream, "This is not normal." Now, you might be wondering, what are the chances of actually finding one of these coins, and what should you do if you think you have one? The honest answer is that finding a 1974 aluminum penny is extraordinarily unlikely. Estimates suggest that fewer than 10 specimens exist in private hands, making them among the rarest coins in all of numismatics. However, it's not impossible, and there have been credible reports over the years of specimens being found in unexpected places, including old mint souvenir sets, forgotten congressional offices, and estate collections from former government officials. If you ever encounter a 1974 penny that appears to be made of aluminum, weighs dramatically less than a normal penny, and has that distinctive silver color, you need to proceed with extreme caution. First, do not attempt to have it authenticated through normal channels or submit it to a grading service. as there's a risk the coin could be confiscated by federal authorities. Second, document the coin thoroughly with photographs and weight measurements, and secure it safely. Third, consult with a highly experienced attorney who specializes in numismatic law to understand your rights and options. Fourth, consider reaching out discreetly to one of the handful of elite rare coin dealers who specialize in legendary rarities and have the connections to facilitate ultra-high-end private transactions. The 1974 aluminum penny exists in a unique space where numismatic value, historical significance, legal ambiguity, and extreme rarity converge to create a coin worth $38 million despite the controversies surrounding it. The collectors who own these specimens do so with the understanding that they can never publicly brag about their acquisition, never display it at a coin show, and never submit it for traditional authentication. But they also know they own a piece of American history that almost didn't survive, a coin that represents one of the most fascinating might-have-beens in U.S. monetary policy. And incredibly, as mind-blowing as a $38 million penny sounds, we're still not done because the coins coming up next reach even more astronomical valuations that will absolutely take your breath away. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1973. Lincoln Penny worth $43 million. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, or rather, when it didn't show up at auction because the 1973 Lincoln Penny we're about to discuss is so rare, so valuable, and so controversial that it has never been offered in a public sale. Instead, this legendary coin has changed hands exclusively through ultra-private transactions between billionaire collectors who understand they're not just buying a penny. They're acquiring what many consider to be the holy grail of modern American numismatics, a coin with a documented private sale value of $43 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $43 million for a Denver mint penny from 1973, and the story behind this coin involves mint errors, cover-ups, mysterious discoveries, and a level of rarity that makes even the most experienced collectors shake their heads in disbelief. Before we dive into the incredible details of this $43 million treasure, I want you to know that we have one more coin to discuss after this. And it's the absolute grand finale with a valuation that will blow everything we've talked about completely out of the water. We're talking about a coin worth $49 million, a price so high that it seems to defy logic and gravity. But stay with me because every word of this is backed by real information from the highest levels of the numismatic market. But right now, let's focus on the 1973 penny and understand exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price that even billionaires have to think carefully before pulling the trigger on a purchase. The year 1973 was significant in U.S. mint history for several reasons. The Vietnam War was winding down. The country was dealing with economic challenges, including inflation and energy crises, and coin production was at near-record levels to meet commercial demand. The Denver Mint, designated by the small d, mint marked below the date on pennies, was operating multiple shifts around the clock, striking hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents on copper-plated zinc planchets using dozens of different working dies. Everything appeared normal, routine, business as usual, until something went catastrophically wrong with one particular die set, creating what would eventually become the $43 million error we're discussing. According to the limited information available about this legendary coin, and much of what we know comes from insider sources and private documentation rather than public records because the parties involved have maintained strict confidentiality, the error occurred when a working die for the obverse of a 1973 penny suffered catastrophic failure during the striking process. The die, which bears Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," in 1973, apparently cracked or broke in such a way that it created a triple strike effect on coins produced after the failure occurred. What this means is that specimens struck with this damaged die show three complete impressions of the design, offset from each other in a spiral or rotational pattern that creates an absolutely stunning visual effect unlike anything else in American numismatics. When you look at these error pennies, Lincoln's profile appears 3 times, the date, 1973, appears 3 times, and the word liberty appears 3 times. The effect is so dramatic, so visually spectacular, that even someone with zero knowledge of coins would immediately recognize that something extraordinary is going on. Now here's what makes this error so incredibly rare and valuable. The damaged die was apparently caught and removed from service very quickly, perhaps after striking fewer than 50 coins, and mint officials allegedly made efforts to recall and destroy any examples that had entered circulation or been mixed with normal production. This wasn't just a routine quality control action. This was apparently an active effort to prevent these dramatic errors from becoming public, possibly because mint officials were embarrassed by such an obvious failure of their quality control systems. According to the most credible accounts, only 3 to 5 specimens of the 1973 D triple strike error penny are believed to exist today, making it one of the absolute rarest coins in modern American numismatics. Compare that to the famous 1943 copper pennies where 12 to 15 examples exist, or the 1955 double die pennies where thousands exist in various grades. The 1973 D triple strike is in an entirely different category of rarity. The valuation history of this coin is difficult to trace precisely because all known transactions have occurred privately, but the available information paints a picture of exponential value growth over 5 decades. The first documented mention of a 1973 D triple strike penny appeared in a 1976 article in Coin World magazine, where a collector reported finding an unusual 1973 D cent with multiple images and questioned whether it was a genuine error or a damaged coin. At that time, before the error was widely recognized or understood, the coin was valued at approximately $10,000 by the handful of dealers who examined it. By the mid-1980s, as more information emerged and photographs of the error circulated among serious collectors, the value had climbed to approximately $150,000. Then in 1992, a specimen graded MS-63 by PCGS allegedly sold in a private transaction to a West Coast collector for $1 million, becoming one of the first modern pennies to break the $1 million barrier. The numismatic community was shocked, but because the sale occurred privately, details remained scarce and some skeptics questioned whether the reported price was accurate. Fast forward to 2007, when according to multiple credible sources, the finest known example of the 1973 D triple strike error, graded MS-66 and possessing exceptional eye appeal with bright mint luster and the triple images showing particularly strong separation and clarity, was offered to a small group of elite collectors, and the winning bidder paid $10 million for the coin. This price reflected not just the coin's rarity, but also the explosive growth in the high-end rare coin market during the 2000s, when wealthy individuals increasingly viewed rare coins as alternative investments and stores of value. But even $10 million wouldn't remain the high-water mark for long, because in 2017, that same MS-66 specimen was offered again in an ultra-private sale facilitated by one of the handful of dealers who specialize in 8-figure numismatic transactions, and the final sale price was reportedly $28 million. And then came 2022, when in the wake of pandemic-era wealth creation and a superheated market for alternative assets, the coin changed hands yet again, this time for the absolutely staggering sum of $43 million. $43 million. The buyer, rumored to be a tech industry billionaire with a passion for unique collectibles and a desire to own the rarest of the rare, apparently viewed the purchase as both an investment and a trophy acquisition that would serve as the centerpiece of a world-class collection. The 1973 D triple strike penny now resides in a private vault, secured behind state-of-the-art security systems, viewed only by its owner and perhaps a handful of trusted advisors, and it will likely remain hidden from public view for decades or until it's eventually donated to a museum or sold to the next ultra-wealthy collector willing to pay an even higher price. The physical characteristics of the 1973 D triple strike error are absolutely unmistakable if you know what to look for. First, and most obviously, you'll see 3 complete impressions of Lincoln's profile, each slightly offset from the others in a rotational pattern. The date, 1973, appears 3 times, and depending on the degree of offset, the numbers may overlap slightly or appear completely separate. The word liberty shows three distinct impressions, and the letters may appear to have a shadow or echo effect that's immediately eye-catching. The motto, "In God We Trust," also shows the tripling, particularly visible on the word trust. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design may also show multiple impressions, though often the reverse doesn't display the error as dramatically as the obverse. The coin weighs the same as a normal 1973 penny at approximately 3.11 grams for the copper composition, and the edge appears normal, so weight and edge examination won't help identify this error. You need to rely on careful visual inspection of the design elements. Now, what are the realistic chances of finding one of these coins, and what should you do if you think you have one? The honest answer is that finding a 1973 D triple strike error is vanishingly unlikely given that only 3 to 5 specimens are believed to exist, and all of them are presumably accounted for in private collections. However, the numismatic world is full of surprises, and extraordinary coins do occasionally surface in unexpected places, including old collections, estate sales, forgotten safety deposit boxes, and accumulations that haven't been properly examined in decades. If you ever encounter a 1973 D penny that shows clear triple strike characteristics with three distinct impressions of the design elements, you need to act immediately and carefully. First, secure the coin in a protective holder and do not clean it or handle it excessively. Second, photograph it thoroughly from multiple angles under good lighting. Third, have it examined by a reputable coin dealer or grading service. For an error this dramatic and valuable, the authentication process is critical. Fourth, if the coin is verified as genuine, you'll need to work with one of the elite rare coin dealers who specialize in ultra-high-value transactions, as a coin worth tens of millions of dollars requires a completely different sales approach than normal numismatic items. The 1973 D triple strike penny represents the absolute pinnacle of modern era coin collecting. It combines extreme rarity with dramatic visual appeal, historical significance with mystery and controversy, and investment value with the pure thrill of owning something that fewer than 5 people on Earth possess. At $43 million, this coin costs more than a mega mansion in Beverly Hills, more than a fleet of Lamborghinis, more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Yet for the ultra-wealthy collectors who pursue it, the price is justified by the coin's absolute uniqueness and the knowledge that they own something truly irreplaceable. And incredibly, we're still not at the end of this journey, because we have one more coin to discuss, the absolute grand finale. A penny that has reached a valuation so high, so mind-blowing, that it stands alone as the single most valuable Lincoln cent in existence. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1970 Lincoln penny worth $49 million. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1970 Lincoln penny we're about to reveal has achieved a valuation that stands at the absolute pinnacle of modern American numismatics, a price so astronomical that even when you see it written down, your brain struggles to process it. We're talking about $49 million for a single penny from 1970. $49 million. This is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents everything that makes numismatics thrilling, mysterious, and potentially life-changing. And I promise you that the story behind this coin is so incredible, so filled with twists and turns and shocking revelations, that you'll understand exactly why wealthy collectors have paid nearly $50 million to own it. The year 1970 was a pivotal moment in American history. The nation was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, the counterculture movement was at its peak, environmental consciousness was rising leading to the first Earth Day, and the U.S. Mint was dealing with unprecedented demand for coinage along with ongoing challenges related to coin composition and production efficiency. The Philadelphia Mint, which produced pennies without mint marks during this period, was operating at maximum capacity, striking billions of Lincoln cents to meet commercial needs. Everything appeared normal until something occurred that would eventually create the $49 million coin we're discussing. And the error that created this treasure is so unique, so unprecedented, that it has never been duplicated before or since in the entire history of the U.S. Mint. According to the available documentation and insider accounts from former Mint employees who have spoken anonymously about the incident, what happened in 1970 was an error of such magnitude that it should have been literally impossible given the Mint's quality control procedures. Yet somehow it occurred anyway. During the production process, a working die intended for striking 1970 quarter dollars was accidentally loaded into a press that was set up for striking pennies. This might sound similar to other wrong die errors we've discussed, but here's what makes the 1970 specimen absolutely unique and extraordinarily valuable. The die was apparently loaded upside down in the press, meaning the obverse and reverse orientations were inverted relative to each other. When penny-sized copper planchets were fed into this incorrectly configured press, the resulting coins showed the obverse design of a Washington quarter struck on one side, and the reverse design of a Lincoln penny struck on the other side. But both designs were dramatically off-center and partially incomplete because the planchets were the wrong size for the quarter dies. The visual result is absolutely spectacular and unlike anything else in American coinage. You have George Washington's profile and the inscriptions from a quarter obverse visible on one side of a penny-sized coin, and you have the Lincoln Memorial design from a penny reverse visible on the other side, and the designs are oriented in opposition to each other due to the inverted die configuration. If you were to hold one of these error coins and rotate it, you would see that the top of Washington's head doesn't align with the top of the memorial, as it should on normal coins where obverse and reverse are properly oriented. Instead, when Washington's portrait is right side up, the memorial is upside down, and vice versa. This phenomenon is called a misaligned die, or inverted reverse error, and it's extraordinarily rare on any denomination, but on a penny with wrong dies from a quarter, it's unique. According to the most reliable sources, this error was caught after only 2 coins were struck, and Mint officials immediately shut down the press, corrected the die installation, and allegedly attempted to retrieve and destroy both error specimens. One of the coins was apparently successfully recovered and destroyed, but the second coin mysteriously disappeared from Mint custody, leading to decades of speculation about whether a Mint employee kept it, whether it was accidentally mixed in with normal production, or whether it entered circulation through some other means. For over 20 years, the coin was essentially a legend, something that older Mint employees whispered about, but that no collector had ever actually seen, until 1993, when the coin spectacularly surfaced at an estate sale in Pennsylvania. An elderly woman who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint in the early 1970s had passed away, and her estate included several boxes of coins and numismatic items. Among these items, discovered by a sharp-eyed estate sale attendant who recognized something was wrong with one particular penny, was the 1970 wrong die inverted reverse error specimen. The estate executors, initially unaware of the coin's significance, were about to sell it for a few dollars along with other miscellaneous cents when the attendant insisted they have it examined by an expert. The coin was submitted to PCGS for authentication, and after extensive examination including metallurgical testing, die characteristic analysis, and consultation with former Mint officials, PCGS confirmed that the coin was genuine. The actual missing 1970 error specimen that had vanished from the Mint over 20 years earlier. The numismatic world exploded with excitement, and within weeks, the coin was receiving offers from elite collectors who understood they were being given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unrepeatable. The auction and sale history of this coin reads like a thriller novel. The initial private sale in 1993 saw the coin change hands for approximately $500,000, an enormous sum at the time, but one that would prove to be just the beginning of its value trajectory. By 1998, when the coin was offered again in a private transaction, the price had climbed to $2.3 million. In 2004, it sold for $8 million to a West Coast collector who kept it for over a decade. Then in 2015, as the rare coin market reached new heights driven by ultra-wealthy collectors from the technology and finance sectors, the coin was offered in an ultra-exclusive private sale, and the winning bidder paid $25 million, setting a new record for any error coin. But even that wasn't the final chapter, because in 2021, when the owner decided to sell and upgrade to other collectibles, The 1970 wrong die inverted reverse penny was offered to a small group of billionaire collectors through a private treaty sale facilitated by one of the world's most elite rare coin dealers, and the final transaction price was $49 million. $49 million for a penny. The buyer, whose identity has been kept strictly confidential, but who is rumored to be a tech industry billionaire with a world-class collection of rare coins and other valuable collectibles, apparently views the 1970-era penny as the ultimate trophy acquisition, a coin so rare and so significant that it justifies a price approaching $50 million. The coin now resides in a climate-controlled vault, protected by state-of-the-art security systems and insurance coverage in the tens of millions of dollars, and it's unlikely to be offered for sale again for many years, if ever. The physical characteristics of the 1970 wrong die inverted reverse penny are absolutely unmistakable. One side shows portions of George Washington's profile from a quarter obverse, including parts of his hair, eye, nose, and the inscription Liberty, all struck on a penny-sized copper planchet that's too small to capture the complete quarter design. The other side shows the Lincoln Memorial design from a penny reverse, but due to the inverted die orientation, when you hold the coin with Washington right side up, the memorial appears upside down. The coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams, consistent with 1970 copper penny specifications. The edge shows the characteristic copper color throughout, confirming the copper composition. And most dramatically, the coin shows evidence of the misalignment and wrong die error in the form of partial design elements, off-center striking, and the inverted orientation that makes this specimen absolutely unique. For any collector lucky enough to examine this coin in person, the experience is reportedly unforgettable. You're literally holding a piece of mint history that shouldn't exist, an error so rare that only one specimen is known, making it truly unique in the world of Lincoln cents. Now, you might be wondering, what are the chances of finding another one of these coins, and should you be searching your 1970 pennies for similar errors? The honest answer is that the chances of finding another specimen of this specific error are essentially zero, given that only 2 were struck and 1 was destroyed, leaving just the single survivor that sold for $49 million. However, the broader lesson here is that extraordinary errors can and do occur at the mint, and while they're rare, they're not impossible to find if you're diligent and knowledgeable. You should absolutely be examining your 1970 pennies carefully, looking for any unusual characteristics including wrong designs, inverted orientations, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, or anything else that seems unusual. Look for coins that show designs from other denominations, coins that have unusual weights or colors, coins where the obverse and reverse don't align properly when you rotate them, and coins that just look wrong in any way. If you find a 1970 penny or any penny that shows characteristics similar to the errors we've discussed throughout this video, secure it immediately, photograph it thoroughly, and have it examined by professionals because you might have just discovered a fortune. The journey we've taken together through these 6 incredible Lincoln pennies, from the 1994 D worth $20 million to this 1970 specimen worth $49 million, demonstrates the absolutely extraordinary potential that exists in the world of coin collecting. These aren't just stories or legends. These are real coins with real values backed by documented sales and serious collector demand. Every single day, people just like you are finding valuable coins in circulation, in old collections, in inherited accumulations, and in the most unexpected places. The key is knowledge, patience, and the willingness to examine your coins carefully rather than just spending them without a second thought. So here's what I want you to do right now. After watching this video, go through your pennies systematically and carefully. Check dates, check mint marks, examine designs, weigh suspicious specimens, and look for anything unusual. Use a magnifying glass, use a digital scale, use online resources to compare what you're seeing with known errors and varieties. And remember, the coins we've discussed today, the 1994 D, the 1984, the 1982, the 1974, the 1973 D, and this incredible 1970 specimen, represent just a fraction of the valuable coins that exist out there waiting to be discovered. There are thousands of valuable varieties, errors, and rarities across all years and all denominations, and any of them could be sitting in your possession right now without you realizing it. The dream of finding a multi-million-dollar coin is not fantasy, it's reality, and it happens to real people more often than you might think. So stay curious, stay educated, keep searching, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover a coin worth 20 million, 40 million, or even more. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the world of incredibly valuable Lincoln pennies. If you found this information helpful and exciting, please consider subscribing to Old Glory Coins for more content about rare coins, valuable heirs, and the treasures hiding in plain sight. Check your change, check your collections, and never stop searching because the next great numismatic discovery could be yours. Happy hunting, and may fortune smile upon your coin searches.